Rivals have been a staple in Pokemon since Pokemon Red and Green. Between each game, rivals act differently and also have different personalities, and they also, unfortunately, aren't all treated equal. So I ask, who is the strongest rival in all of the Pokemon games? Well, this video is going to be breaking down each rival, and we're going to actually find out who the strongest is at all. Now, before we start breaking down the rivals, we need to go over who counts as a rival and some rules. To start with, I'm only counting rivals in their respective games, so sorry Blue, your team in Ultra Sun and Moon doesn't count. We're also basing all the teams on the latest games where they are rivals. For example, Blue will be going with his Fire Red and Leaf Green team instead of his Blue, Red, and Yellow teams. The other rule I am setting is they have to get their starter Pokemon with you or witness getting it. So, sorry N, this list isn't for you as well. I'll also be excluding the rivals from the DLC in Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet. Next, we'll be ranking the rivals on a few things, team composition levels, and how well their move coverage is. We will also be breaking down each rival based on the region as well. So now that we have our rules, let's break this down and start with Kanto. Blue was the first rival in Pokemon. He's a bit of an arrogant person which plays into his battling style. He picks a starter that's strong against you and isn't afraid of holding back when it comes to battling. Throughout your journey, his team does change throughout the game. His final team you end up fighting post-game after the Sevi Islands part of the game, and this team is actually a powerhouse. His team is all in their 70s, with the lowest being 72 and the highest being 75. His first three Pokemon are insanely powerful, being Heracross, Alakazam, and Tyranitar. The rest of his team depends on what your starter choice is, where you'll have a Gyarados, Exeggutor, and Charizard if you pick Bulbasaur, Arcanine, Exeggutor, and Blastoise if you pick Charmander, and Arcanine, Gyarados, and Venusaur if you picked Squirtle. His entire team is meta-defining, and his weakest mon is Exeggutor, but even that isn't anything to laugh at, as it's used to do some insane setups with Light Screen and Sleep Powder. His team carries setup moves, such as Heracross with Rock Tomb to lower speed as well. Light Screen and Reflect with Exeggutor and Alakazam. His team has coverage for weaknesses as well. His team has insane synergy and is honestly something that makes him one of the stronger rivals. It might even be the strongest rival. Next, let's start talking about the other Kanto rival. And no, not Leaf, but Trace. Trace, one of those two. Unlike Blue, Trace is a super bland and a generic rival that goes with you through Kanto. His team doesn't change like Blue's does, to the degree that instead it changed based on if you get Let's Go or Pikachu. His team is composed of a Pidgeot, Vileplume, Marowak, Rapidash, Slowbro, and either a Jolteon or Raichu depending on the version. Level-wise, his team is around the mid-60s, with the highest level being 67 with either Jolteon or Raichu. Team composition-wise, this is just a downgrade from Blue's. The only real advantage here is his Pidgeots and Mega Pidgeot. Vileplume, Marowak, and Rapidash are all okay Pokemon. Slowbro and Jolteon can be solid. Both are super strong special Pokemon. One positive thing I can say about Trace is his moveset. They aren't like insane, and they don't have as much setup potential as Blue does, but they do have some nice moves such as Reflect on Vileplume, Light Screen on Slowbro, Poison Jab on Rapidash. While I definitely don't think this is the strongest rival moveset we've seen, it's pretty decent, especially in a game so focused on catching instead of battling. So with that being said, let's go to Johto. Silver is a character introduced in Generation 2 and is actually the only rival in Johto. Like Blue, is a very arrogant character, except where Blue is cocky because of his lineage. Silver is cocky because he wants to be the best and stop Team Rocket. Throughout the game, he challenges you a handful of times. His team doesn't change as much as Blue's does, but it will change depending on the starter you selected. As a reminder, we'll just be using his Heart Gold Soul Silver team for this discussion. His team does have some super solid, strong members, such as Gengar, Crobat, and Alakazam. The Johto starters are also really solid, except the moves they all carry, but we'll get to that. The biggest problem with this team is he also has a Sneasel and a Magneton in a game where Magnezone and Weavile are a thing. Magneton could get a pass if it had an item, but unfortunately none of Silver's Pokemon have items. With that, let's look at the levels of his Pokemon. Johto has always had an odd level scaling problem to begin with, and unfortunately for Silver, he also suffers from this. His highest Pokemon is level 60, which is the starter, while the rest of his team are around level 55. Out of all the rivals on this list, these are some of the lowest levels that we will see. Now, earlier I said something about his Pokemon moves. They are all over the place. He has some really solid moves on the likes of Gengar and Alakazam with coverage such as Dark Pulse and Focus Blast. Starter-wise, Feraligatr also carries some really solid coverage with Ice Fang, Slash, and Aqua Tail. However, this is kind of where that ends. Crobat has only one physical move, being Bide. Meganium is okay with Light Screen, but only has one special move, which is Petal Dance. Typhlosion at least has Flamethrower, but other than that, it only has Rollout and Swift. It does carry Will-O-Wisp for utility, but these movesets could most definitely be improved. Generation 3 was the first game to actually give us multiple rivals. As I stated before, we'll be basing these teams off Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. Brennan and May change their team based on what starter you pick. The only consistent of their team are Swellow and Raichu. They rotate between Wailord, Breloom, and the starter Pokemon of the region. So let's break down their teams. First, this is the first rival that only has 5 Pokemon, so they're already a leg down, but maybe they have some really strong mons on their team, right? Unfortunately, no. Minus the Mega Evolution starter, their teams are all just kind of bland. Another point is none of their Pokemon on their team have any held items. Level-wise, the highest they get is level 50, which I didn't think it was possible to get lower than Silver, but here we are. The lowest level mon is 48, which every Pokemon on their team except Sceptile, Blaziken, and Swampert. Again, this is a really big disappointment, as I actually like Brennan and May as characters, but so far their teams haven't really done anything amazing. Move-wise, they have some options such as Thunder Wave, Light Screen on Raichu, U-Turn on Swellow for pivoting, and Marcargo, if it can live a hit, has some solid moves like Earth Power, Lava Plume, and Rock Slide. The starters also have some solid moves, such as Sceptile having Leaf Blade, X's, or Knot Slash, which you would think is bad because Sceptile's a special attacker, but remember this is Mega Sceptile. It also does carry Dual Chop for dragon coverage. Blaziken has at least Blaze Kick and Brick Break, but that's really all it's got that's worth anything. Swampert has Earthquake, Rock Slide, which is nice, but it only carries Muddy Water for its water move, which is okay because it lowers accuracy, but it could have something much better, such as Waterfall, giving it the physical move option. As I said earlier, this is the first region to have more than one rival in the region, Wally being the second rival. Wally starts out as a sick and timid boy who wants to do the gym challenge but gets told no. This changes when he gets his first Pokemon Ralts, eventually gets the okay, and you fight him a total of 4 times on your journey. Wally's team doesn't actually change that much, but the 4th battle and onwards his team is actually stacked. Roserade, Talonflame, Azumarill, Magnezone, Garchomp, and Gallade. These are all insanely good Pokemon, and not only are they good, they all have items and insane abilities. The lowest level on Wally's team is also 79, while the highest is 81. Which so far is the highest level we've seen on a rival. As I mentioned earlier, his team has items that actually fit his Pokemon. He has Life Orb on Talonflame, making this thing an absolute unit, carrying moves like Brave Bird, Tailwind, and Flare Blitz for utility and sweeping options, and it actually does have Gale Wings as its ability. And that's just one of his Pokemon. Azumarill has Assault Vest with moves like Aqua Jet, Play Rough, and Aqua Tail, also carrying huge power. Magnezone is sturdy with an air balloon, and having moves like Thunder Wave, Reflect, Discharge, and Flash Cannon. Gallade is his ace in the hole, and it's his Mega Evolution, carrying moves like Close Combat, Swords Dance, and Psycho Cut. It's funny how Wally goes from such a weak kid to possibly one of the strongest rivals to date. Sinnoh takes us back to one rival being Barry. Barry's a very impatient person, finding you every step throughout your journey. To get to fight his strongest team, you actually have to enter the Hall of Fame 20 times, and this is actually a super high hurdle to even get to this point. So let's see if his team actually stacks up to it. His team, much like other rivals, does change things up, with the core members being Staraptor, Snorlax, and Heracross. The next 3 rotate between the starter picks, and with Rapidash, Floatzel, and Roserade. Honestly, most of these Pokemon are pretty solid. Most of them have pretty good items. The abilities are solid too, with Thick Fat Snorlax, Intimidate Staraptor, and Flashfire Rapidash. Level-wise, they range from 68 to 74, so they are on the higher end. Let's take a look at their movesets. Staraptor is fast and has setup moves like Sunny Day or Rain Dance, with the utilities of U-Turn, as well as options to nuke with close combats. It does carry a Focus Sash, so no matter what, it's getting a hit off. Floatzel has some nice moves with Ice Fang and Waterfall, but for some reason it has Quick Claw. Heracross is a sweeper with Swords Dance, Close Combat, Mega Horn, and Rock Slide, but doesn't have any held items for some reason. Rapidash and Snorlax both have pretty okay movesets with Flare Blitz on Rapidash, but Snorlax only has Covet for normal stab. And Torterra has also got some nice setup with Stealth Rocks and Yawn, and carries Earthquake and Woodhammer ready to KO anything that isn't prepared. Unova is going to be an interesting one because we have 2 games worth of rivals to cover, making it actually a total number of 3. Which, if you haven't already seen, I made a video a few weeks ago theorizing what I think is coming next for the Unova region, so please check it out in the link in the description. That being said, let's start with Ceran. He's a trainer who's actually really smart and offers advice throughout the player's journey through Unova. He is one of the few rivals to become a gym leader in a sequel game, the first of which being Blue. But let's just see how smart he is with his team. His team consists of Liepard, Unfezant, Gigalith, and Haxorus. He rotates out his starter and the monkey Pokemon Simisage, Simipour, and Simisear. Honestly, this really isn't a terrible team. The monkeys are the weakest link on his team, unfortunately, but at least the moves they have on him are pretty solid, and we'll get to that later. Level-wise, he has an average with levels being 65 to 67. Move-wise, his Pokemon are also really solid. He has stuff like Fake Out Liepard. The monkeys all carry a super strong stab moves such as Flamethrower, Energy Ball, and Surf. and they have some coverage such as Rock Slide, Brick Break, and Payback. Unfezant has Super Luck and Scope Lens with stuff like Air Slash, U-Turn, and Facade. Gigalith has Stealth Rock, Stone Edge, and Rock Slide. Haxorus has Outrage, Rock Slide, and X-Scissor. It also carries a Dragon Gem, so the Outrage hits even harder on an already massive attack stat Pokemon. The starters all carry really solid moves as well, such as Hydro Pump, Flare Blitz, and Leaf Storm on the respective topping. Unfortunately, he doesn't really have too many setup moves outside of Coil Superior. Overall, I feel like Ceran is a little bit above average of the road when it comes to rivals, but for right now we're just halfway through this list, so let's just see how the rest compare. Bianca's next on this list. Similar to Ceran, her Pokemon are all in the 60s range, ranging from 63 to 65. Her team is composed of Stoutland, Musharna, Mienshao, and Chandelure, and she rotates out the Monkey Trio and the starter as well. Her team is okay with stuff like Chandelure and Stoutland, but honestly that's about it. None of her Pokemon have hold items, and some have okay movesets. Stoutland having Return, Ice Fang, and Wild Charge, while Chandelure having Shadow Ball, Overheat, and Psychic is nice. But other than that, she really doesn't have much going for her, unfortunately, which probably explains why she wants to become a professor in the next game. Hugh is next, who is described as someone who's passionate for battling. He just wants to make sure to get his sister's Pokemon back from Team Plasma. You do actually fight Hugh a handful of times, and he also joins with you throughout your journey. His team is the same level as Ceran, but his Pokemon ranging from 65 to 67. Also, like Ceran and Bianca, his team doesn't change except for the starters and Monkey Trio. His team has Unfezant, Bouffalant, Flygon, Electros, and one of the Monkey Trio and starter Pokemon. Overall, this team is okay, but doesn't really have any balance and focuses on more straight offense, and you can see that by his moves. With things like Head Charge, Wild Charge, Bouffalant, Giga Impact, Unfezant, and Wild Charge, Electros. His Pokemon all do carry items, which is nice to see that becoming a staple in Rivals. Unfortunately, this won't be the case moving forward. Overall, his team suffers from not being able to do much other than just hit really hard, which works well enough, but compared to the other Rivals on this list so far, I think it just falls short of being something insane. Kalos is known to be one of, if not the easiest Pokemon game, so how do their Rivals actually stack up to the ones above? Well, let's find out, as it is the game with the most Rivals in a Pokemon game. Starting off, I'm just going to combine Shauna, Tierno, and Trevor, as these three Rivals are just really bad. They each only have 3 Pokemon ranging from 48 to 52. None of the Pokemon are insane with insane abilities. You have stuff like Talonflame, but it just has Flame Body. They don't even carry 4 moves on most of their Pokemon, and they're honestly just really disappointing, so let's go ahead and move on from them. Moving on to Caleb and Serena. These 2 trainers are the main rivals in X and Y, and their team actually does depend on your starter as normal, but depending on if you play as the male protagonist or the female protagonist will also actually influence their team very slightly. Level-wise, they have Pokemon ranging from 66 to 70, which is on the lower end of the scale, but not the lowest. The teams they use are Meowstic, Clefable, Absol, Altaria, rotating out an evolution and the starter. These rivals unfortunately always pick the starter that is weak to yours as well. Overall, team-wise, they have some solid Pokemon like Altaria, Clefable, and Absol. Interestingly enough, Meowstic is the female form for Serena, which is more offensive, while Caleb has the male version, which is a more supportive Pokemon. The problem is that they have the same moveset between the two, being Fake Out, Psychic, Shadow Ball, and Disarming Voice. And this means that the male Meowstic can actually make use of its full potential. Other than that, the teams aren't really anything to write home about. They have multiple Pokemon that only have 3 moves, and none of their Pokemon have items once again, except Absol, carrying its Mega Stone. But at least Absol has Swords Dance and Night Slash, so it does have the potential to set up sweep. And that, friends, takes care of Kalos. Let's move on to the tropical islands of Alola. Alola only has one rival, being Hau, in my books, and by the rules I set from the earlier part of the video, so let's take a look and see what Hau has. We will of course be using his Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon team as well. Hau is someone that loves Malasadas and travels with you throughout the region, challenging you a handful of times and actually helps with the Team Aether plot. His team changes based on your starter and rotates out an evolution and the starter Pokemon similar to how the Gen 6 rivals did, with the core members being Alola and Raichu, Tauros, Noivern, and Carboncle. Level-wise, they range from 68 to 70, so a little over the middle tier. And move-wise, once again, he is plagued with Pokemon not having 4 moves, and also not having items except a starter. But at least this time, it's only a starter that's not having 4 moves, so let's break it down. Alola and Raichu is a pretty solid Pokemon. It's carrying Stab, Thunderbolt, and Psychic. Tauros has stuff like Zen Headbutt, Earthquake, and Double Edge. Noivern has stuff like Dragon Pulse, Air Slash, and Dark Pulse. Carboncle has stuff like Stone Edge, Power Punch, and Ice Hammer, using Power Up Punch to set up moves. The starters also all have a stab move with Leaf Blade, Moonblast, and Flare Blitz, along with their signature moves. The evolutions have the same moveset except one stab move. This also makes him the only Pokemon on his team with any type of status moves, such as Charm and Baby Doll Eyes. While I do think his team has some potential, it falls short in my book of being able to be a real threat. Galar is next on our list, and unfortunately our rules dictate that only Hop will be able to be on this list. Sorry, best girl Marnie. Hop is a character who wants to be just like his older brother, Leon, and become champion. While a good chunk of the game he is confident, he ends up losing to Bede and starts to doubt his abilities after losing so many times to the player character and Bede. Hop's team changed the most out of any rival throughout the journey, and he experiments with different team setups. His final team ends up only being 5 members, being Double, Snorlax, Corviknight, and the starter Pokemon, and either Zacian or Zamazenta with their held item. He's actually the first rival on this list to actually use a legendary Pokemon for battle, and the legendary Pokemon is also insanely strong. None of his Pokemon have held items once again, except Zacian and Zamazenta, which is a shame after we had so many rivals before having held items, and it seems to be lost. Move-wise, they do actually have some solid utility with Light Screen, Swagger, and G-Max Corviknight, just in general being able to do G-Max moves. Double is also carrying Cotton Guard for some extra defense. Zacian has Swords Dance and Zamazenta has Iron Defense, so they could easily set up and sweep. Honestly, move-wise, he has some solid moves with stuff like Earthquake, Snorlax, Drill Peck, Corviknight, but nothing still compares to the previous rivals on these lists. This probably explains why he wants to become a professor, similar to how Bianca did in Pokemon Black and White. And while I do think that his Pokemon have a lot of potential, I think that they're just shy of being there. Our final rival we're talking about on this list is the lovely Nemona. Nemona is someone who loves Pokemon battling more than anything else and wants a challenge. Throughout her journey with you, she never uses her full force until the very last battle, when she recognizes you as another champion. Let's see how her team actually checks out and see if she can back up her bark. Level-wise, her Pokemon are level 71 and her starter 72, so they are up there for rivals. Team-wise, she actually also has a really strong team, only rotating out her starter on the list. The core members are Lycanroc Midday form, Goodra, Dunsparce, Orthworm, and Pawmine. The final team member, of course, is a starter that is weak to Years. Again, none of her Pokemon have held items, which is really unfortunate. But at least her team has some of the best balance we've seen in a rival with sweepers such as Pawmine and Lycanroc, walls like the Dunsparce, Goodra, and Orthworm. Movesets are also really good on her Pokemon as well, with stuff like Lycanroc with Stone Edge, Drill Run, and Stealth Rock, Goodra with Dragon Pulse and Sludge Bomb to cover its fairy weakness, the Dunsparce carrying Cool to boost its defense and Drill Run and Hyper Drill to hit really hard. Orthworm is also something not to scoff at, as it's carrying Earthquake, Body Press, and makes use of its insane defense stats. Pawmine also having Double Shock to remove its top and hit hard, and Ice Punch for coverage is also really nice to see. The starters also have some solid moves, with Meowscarada carrying Thunder Punch and Play Rough, Quacklequabble carrying Ice Spinner and Aerial Ace, and Skeledirge also having Snarl and Earth Power with Torch Song, boosting its special attack. And with that, we've talked about every rival who meets my rule set I placed for this list. So who's the strongest rival is the final question. A few that I think stand out from this research are honestly Blue, Wally, and Nemona. Hop also kind of gets an honorable mention. Unfortunately, I'm going to axe him here just because of 5 Pokemon and no items really is holding him back. But I think the winner honestly has to be Wally. Between Wally having the highest level, competitive movesets, access to Mega Evolution, and actual competitive items, I don't think anyone's actually going to be able to stand up to him. While overall I think Blue's team comp is better, I think Wally proves a fierce force that once he starts going, I don't think Blue can keep up. Nemona also falls short of this, being able to keep up with Wally and Blue without her having items and her team comp not being as strong as Blue. So there we have it. Wally, the timid challenger, takes the cup in my opinion. Thank you everyone for watching this video. It took a lot of time and research and is probably the most ambitious video I've done and tried. If you enjoyed it, please like and think about subscribing, as it really helps me out, and I really want to continue to do these types of videos because I'm having a lot of fun with them. And let me know who you think the strongest rival is for this list. And also let me know if you agree or disagree with the stuff I found in this video. Until next time, I'll catch you guys later.